Welcome in, everyone, to Beyond the Beat, brought to you by 32 Beat Writers, part of the Player Profiler network of podcasts. My name is Zach Hyduk, and today I am doing another solo show for you. Matt is back from vacation and should be joining us next week, but unfortunately won't be able to be with us today because, well, frankly, he's a lazy bum. Actually, he's been doing a lot of work on the website and in the background for you guys. So if you have seen our article that we posted maybe a couple weeks ago at this point about kind of what we're looking to bring you this coming year, I know we're currently in, well, this year, it's going to be a pretty big deal. And we're very excited about that. So he's off working on some of those things at the moment now. Today's show, just going to be a couple thoughts and comments on the fantasy focused news from the beat, as that is what we do. And we're going to focus on at least two beat writer phone calls that we got. Thank you to Katherine Fitzgerald and Mike Kaye. You would have heard Mike if you were listening during the summer. And this is Katherine's first time on the show. So thank you to both of them for sending in their calls here. We'll also hit some of the injuries to watch out for with Dr. Tom Christ. And we'll also check in on some of the teams coming back from the bye week and maybe some of the things that could change or what we could expect from that. I think those are some things that I'm going to be looking at each week now that we have teams coming back from bye weeks regularly, just because we know that things can kind of change after teams have that week to kind of evaluate and self-scout and, see what changes there. So we'll look into that. And yes, I do have on my podcasting shirt. And I do, we're trying to make it a brand. So if you have any suggestions on, I don't know, anything else. Yeah, exactly, Tanner. Swag. That's what it's kind of me. Is we're making it our own thing here. Matt's always wearing like a hoodie, and I'm always wearing some sort of Hawaiian or Florida man shirt. So without further ado, if you have a comment or question, please make sure to put it in the comments if you're watching this live, whether that be on YouTube or X. And let's get right into it with some of the bits from the beat. The Bills acquire Amari Cooper in a trade. You would have already heard about this. I asked for an opinion from Katherine Fitzgerald of Buffalo News, and here is what she had to say.
Hey, this is Katherine Fitzgerald from the Buffalo News. Was calling just to talk about Amari Cooper with the Buffalo Bills now. Huge move. I think it's really going to be a spark for this Bills offense, just the different ways he's going to help them on and off the field, just kind of how he's going to be in this offense. Still obviously early for this week against the Titans about how they're going to get him incorporated, talking to different coaches, teammates, Amari himself basically saying how much there is to take on. But long term, I think it's going to be really good for the Buffalo offense, just when you look at how he is a downfield threat and can get open so well against man-to-man coverage. You look at the routes he can run. That's something we heard from Bills players who have gone up against him in the past. Rasul Douglas was saying how there's some games he doesn't want to remember against Amari Cooper because Cooper was so strong against him, and he puts him in the top of the top for route running, Douglas told us on Thursday. So, I think just kind of the way he's going to stretch the field for the Bills will be huge, but also just what he can do for this wide receiver room as far as being a mentor. Different guys have talked about how he can help Keon Coleman, the Bills rookie, learn more and more as he adjusts to the NFL. So I think there's a few ways he's really going to help the Buffalo offense, which also, you look at them, they, in my opinion, needed to add to this wide receiver room, but we're also sitting at 4-2. So they're in a really solid spot, and I think this is just going to open up more things for Josh Allen. There's going to take some time to build that chemistry between the quarterback and the wide receiver. But once they get going, this is going to be a boost for the offense, and I think just kind of help open up different things. So pretty exciting. Splashy move. I like what they did. It's been fun to cover Amari so far, and looking forward just to watching to see how it translates to the field.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Katherine then, of course, on that front. It's something that Sean McDermott was asked about just recently. Let me get back, get me in the right spot here. My goodness. Not looking. There we go. All right. Gotta put myself back on camera here. It looks like James Cook is going to be a go, just as a sidebar, since we're talking about the Bills here. So Ray Davis out, James Cook. Well, Ray Davis isn't, I don't think, a shoe-in to be out, but it looks like he may or may not play, and James Cook should play. So that should help out. And if Amari Cooper is going to be on the field, Sean McDermott said that I would think so, but I want to see, and I want to visit with the offensive coaches again. So that from Katherine Fitzgerald just moments ago on Twitter. You can find that over there on our feed at 32 Beat Yarders. And make sure, of course, to follow Katherine at Kaye Fitz134. That's Kaye Fitz134 on X, and her work, of course, at Buffalo News. So thanks to new friend of the show, Katherine Fitzgerald, for joining us on that. As far as like what I kind of expect on that front, man, Amari Cooper here, I think it's going to be a situation where that really does, as she mentioned, open up the offense, right? James Cook was really what was the engine that was driving this team. Obviously, not that Josh Allen isn't in command of this offense, but they were really leaning on that run game for the first, several weeks here. And so I'd expect that with Amari Cooper just being that separator that we haven't really seen from Keon Coleman, it's going to be something that probably complements itself and allows those two to work together. So we'll see how involved he gets against the Titans this week, but something to watch out for, and I think something exciting. So we also saw this week that JonathanBrooks is officially practicing, and that is big news. I probably, you could say I maybe called you guys a little early to have you, get on and make sure you're picking him up in any fantasy leagues that he's still kind of out there on waivers. Obviously, at this point, there's basically zero chance that that's the case, I would assume. Let's see what our friend Mike Kaye has to say about the return of Jonathan Brooks.
Guys, it's Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer, Panthers beat reporter. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks returned to practice on Wednesday. He is coming off a pretty major knee surgery towards ACL in November. He practiced for the first time since on Wednesday. The Panthers are going to take him along slowly in his 21-day window. I would expect for him to take up most, if not all of that window to rev up to get ready for the weeks ahead. And if he were to take up the entire allotted time, he would debut in Germany against the Giants on November 10th. Now, Brooks is a guy who doesn't need to immediately rush back. Chuba Hubbard is one of the top running backs in the league this season. He's running the ball very well at a very large clip. The Panthers have largely been a two-back system where Miles Sanders has been peppered in a little bit, but it's mostly been the Chuba Hubbard experience. As we talked to you guys about several weeks ago, this is Chuba's show. They're not just going to take the hot hand and put it in their back pocket. He's the guy right now. They're going to try to bring Brooks along slowly, try to find a role for him. It would not be shocking if he filled Miles Sanders' role down the stretch, specifically after the bye week, where they have 7 games down the home stretch. I'd imagine that Brooks gets brought in very slowly once he does hit the ground running. They want to make sure that he's mentally ready. What they say about ACL injuries, typically they're more mental recoveries than they are physical. You've got to feel good about planting your foot. You've got to feel good about taking hits. We also have to remember he has not taken a hit in 11 months. So they need to determine what he can do right away. They have to see what he is comfortable with, and I think you'll see that mature over the next couple of weeks, but I would not expect him back anytime soon, and what I mean by that is I don't expect for him to play against Washington this weekend. I don't expect for him to play against Denver the following weekend. I think the earliest he'd be back is probably the Saints home game before they head out to Germany. So right now, the Panthers are monitoring his knee injury, and I think we will see him down the road in the wintertime when it gets a little colder out. That's another thing they have to consider as they get him revved up for his ultimate return to the football field.
All right. I think the most disappointing part of that is that he said that he would kind of anticipate not seeing him until, the Giants in week 9. Guys, that is 3 or 4 weeks from now, depending on how you count that. Interestingly, I'm actually going to be seeing the Commanders versus the Panthers this weekend. I'm going to go to that lovely FedEx Field and hopefully see Jaden Daniels cut it up against the Panthers defense this week. But I don't think I'll be seeing Jonathan Brooks at least anywhere but the sideline. So, I would have hoped to see him a little bit bigger because here's the deal. The Giants and the Panthers play, as he mentioned, in week 10, right? And then they go on bye week. And then you get Chiefs, Bucks and Vita Vea, Eagles, and then I guess Cowboys if you're in the playoffs and championship weeks. So best case scenario, you get depending on how your playoff structure is in your fantasy football leagues, you're getting them 2-3 weeks maybe before that happens. Excuse me. And that's just that is a little bit big of a bummer. So if you've been holding on to him for that long, at this point, if what Mike's telling us is going to be the case, it might be worth getting rid of him and trading for somebody else if somebody's willing to pay for that. That's my only thought. That's kind of an L that I'm taking if I'm going to do that. I'm kind of just thinking this through as we're listening to this information. So something to think about, something to consider. If somebody kind of believes that he might come back earlier rather than later, I might do that. It seems as though, like Mike mentioned, they're going to really be taking their time here with him because he is a big part of their future. And from the very beginning, and we've heard quotes from Dave Canales, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that he's 100% and mentally there, as Mike mentioned as well. So Chuba Hubbard currently, for what it's worth, is averaging 5.6 yards carry, has 485 yards on the season and 2 scores on the ground. So as he mentioned, you might get better production from Jonathan Brooks, but frankly, do they need it? So that is something to consider as well. And Uncle Ted, you're saying that Brooks isn't coming back until after the bye. Definitely could be possible. I mean, the reality is he has to play at some point once that window closes. So unless he's just out for the rest of the season, at least he has to be on the 53-man roster. And so that being said, I can't imagine they just don't play him at all. So they'll play him some prior or in front of the bye, I would have to assume. But how much that is certainly is up for debate. So make sure to follow Mike at Mike_E_K. That's Kaye, Mike_E_K. And find his work at the Charlotte Observer. All right. I'm going to go ahead and give ourselves a quick break for a promotion from our sponsor.
Oh, the NFL season is underway, and if you drafted on Fast Draft this summer, the Origins All-Rookie Game, the Flex 4 game, check the live scoring, see where you are in the standings. You might be in line for a big payday. And no matter where you are in the world, you should have the Fast Draft app because there's a custom Dynasty mock tool that's free to everybody with super sharp ADPs, and we're rolling out DFS tournaments throughout the year, and the 2025 tournaments will go live before any of us realize, oh my God, the 2025 season is upon us. Download Fast Draft, register, and you will be alerted as soon as these new contests are unleashed. Check it out on fastdraft.app.
All right. Thank you to our sponsor for that. Let's cut over to a short injury update with Dr. Tom Christ.
This is Tom Christ from the Fantasy Injury Team, here to give you your Week 7 injury updates. It is Wednesday night when I'm recording this, so be sure to follow me for updates throughout the week. Aaron Jones did not practice today as he's still dealing with that hip injury. Running backs average a decline of 20% fantasy points when they return from this injury, so we'll monitor how he does throughout the week. He's the type of player that catches the ball and has a nose for the end zone, so even if he does play, I do still think he's startable as long as his practice picks up throughout the week. Jordan Mason dealing with that AC joint injury, limited practice today. That's good news. It sounds like he'll probably play. Running backs are hardly affected by this, only in a 7% dip in fantasy points on average. Travis Etienne, limited participant with a hamstring injury. The LP tells us that there's a chance that he plays, so of course we'll monitor throughout the week. Running backs average missing 1.8 games, and their fantasy stats are actually unchanged when they return from a hamstring injury. Jerome Ford, also with a hamstring injury, did not practice. He's expected to miss a few weeks. Same deal with Tyjae Spears, expected to miss a few weeks. Dallas Goedert, also dealing with the hamstring, did not practice, also expected to miss a few weeks. Tight ends average missing 2.1 games. Fantasy stats are also unchanged when they return, but they do see about an 11% dip in snaps when they return. Some guys with concussions, Malik Neighbors is progressing well through the protocol. He has not cleared it yet, but he is on track to play this week, so just keep tuning into his practice reports there. Devon Achane, full practice today, should play. Marvin Harrison Jr., as of this recording, I have not seen any practice updates from the Cardinals, so of course just monitor him throughout the week. For all these guys, if they play, we don't see any drop-off in fantasy points after a concussion. Jaden Reed dealing with an ankle injury, seems minor, limited participant on Wednesday. As long as he plays, this shouldn't bother him too much. Receivers average missing only one game and see about a 14% dip in fantasy points. He's really, really good. So that, to me, that's not enough to hold him out of my lineup. James Cook was limited today. He missed last week with that turf toe injury, of course. When these are more severe, as in like missing a week or two, they can really kind of zap their speed and explosiveness. So monitor how he does throughout the week. But even if he does play, I think he's startable because, he's catching the ball. He's able to get in the end zone. But I do think Buffalo will give more work to Ray Davis and some of the other guys until Cook is at 100%. But again, Cook's been really, really good. So even him at like 80% is still startable. Rachaad White plays Monday night, so I don't have any practice reports yet. But if he does play, these midfoot injuries can really zap your explosiveness. Pretty similar to a turf toe, where if it's mild, it's not a big deal. But if it's moderate to severe, it can really zap your change of direction and explosiveness. And with how well both Tampa's other running backs played last week, even if White plays, I don't know that he's startable this week. Ramondre also dealing with the same injury, did not practice today. It's pretty much the same analysis. Like even if he does go, he's likely not going to have that full explosiveness, and they can tape and put little plates in the shoe that can help with that. So Ramondre compared to Rachaad White is in a little better situation where Antonio Gibson's really not going to take too much of his work. So based off your roster construction, if Ramondre plays, you may be able to start him. Jonathan Taylor did not practice. This is going to be a tough one because historically running backs actually see no drop-off in fantasy points when they return from a high ankle sprain. And with how good Jonathan Taylor is, if he does play, I think you got to start him. But if you're seeing DNP followed by like barely practicing Friday, that may raise some red flags for you. His teammate Anthony Richardson, full practice. I'm not concerned with this at all. If he would have played that first game after the injury, I would have been really concerned for his throw power, but by now that should all be fine. Brian Robinson, limited practice. Keep monitoring him. If he plays, you can definitely start him. He's got a real nose for the end zone. Nick Chubb, this one's exciting. It looks like he's finally going to play this week. And with Jerome Ford being injured, Chubb may actually be forced into a pretty big role. Now, that said, I would not expect the same explosiveness out of Chubb. I put out an Instagram reel on the Fantasy Injury Team's Instagram page with a lot more detail into this. And on average, running backs see a 35% dip in fantasy points in the first game after an ACL. So while exciting, I wouldn't expect a ton from him. And lastly, Cooper Kupp. Looks like he might play. If he does, you're starting him. Receivers fantasy points are unchanged when they return from a high ankle sprain.
All righty. Thank you, Tom, for that update. I'm trying to see if we get anything from the Jonathan Taylor side of things, but based on what I was kind of seeing, I'm not really anticipating playing him this week. I have him in a Dynasty league and been out that a couple of weeks, which is a bummer. So if I get anything on that, I'll certainly tweet that out. So pay attention there as well. All right, let's go ahead and look into a couple of the teams coming off of the bye week and what could feasibly change, or if anything, may be a little bit different. So first, we've got the Rams coming off the bye, and they will be facing the Raiders. They are 7-point favorites, at least last time I looked, I think sometime yesterday. against the Raiders. So this should be an absolute smash for Kyren Williams. I don't see that changing, obviously. He's been very, very good. And as Tom mentioned, we should see Cooper Kupp back. So my question then is, will we see Blake Corum? To begin the year, I was asked a lot, especially if I was guesting on other shows, whether or not Blake Corum would take over the job. We obviously had those reports as well. Talked with Jordan Rodriguez a tiny little bit about this. But regarding the reports that, one would be doing punt returns, one would be doing kick returns. What the heck does this mean? All that. Turns out it meant absolutely nothing. And basically what I was kind of expecting and what I had told a lot of hopeful people for Blake Corum is that, look, Sean McVay has his guys, has his dudes, and what he's going to do is going to feed the guy that he loves. We've seen that all the time with Sean McVay and even some Sean McVay acolytes, as it were. And Blake Corum, unless something changes, I'm just not expecting anything to change coming out of the bye. But that's something to watch. Does he get more snaps? We've basically seen almost nothing from this guy. So I don't think he'll be super relevant. I think they still ride Kyren Williams because Sean McVay loves his guy. Would I start Cooper Kupp this week if he plays, which it looks like he will? Absolutely. The Raiders are in a bad spot right now. Being 7-point favorites certainly leans more towards the running game here. But if anybody's going to score, I would expect, Kupp over, say, Jordan Whittington, who I think had like 8 to 10 targets before the bye week, but, they didn't have a whole heck of a lot else. And Puka at the moment still remains sidelined until he's back. Would I start the wide receiver 2 in this game? Completely honest, I don't think so. I just am a little bit nervous that they're going to lean on the run game, and then you're going to get a lot of Cooper Kupp action. But we'll see. Chiefs come out of the bye facing the 49ers. If you're going to be seeing an uptick on Xavier Worthy usage, this is the week to pay attention. He has not gotten more than 3 receptions, I think, in a game. You can fact check me on that one. He has had 2 scores in week 1, of course, and was relevant then. But other than that, has not been super relevant, especially if you're in a dynasty league and you drafted him at like the 4 or the 5 spot. I assume you're certainly disappointed there. You've got to be pretty bummed. Pat Mahomes, I heard this on the Heed the Call podcast yesterday, by the way. They do good work over there. Pat Mahomes has a historically low air yards per completion, lowest in the next gen stats era, which is like at 3.3 yards. So I think he's air yards wise 3.3 yards per completion. So everything is just short, quick bubbles and around, those motions that they like to do there. And I would like to see if they get Worthy more involved in that. I was not a huge Worthy believer, but certainly they have not been attacking down the field, and that's been pretty obvious. Now, we've got some questions about Juju. I don't know about his hamstring off the top of my head here, and I don't have a moment to really dig into that, but we'll be tweeting out more this afternoon. So again, keep paying attention. But I would assume that if we're going to see a change, this is the week we're going to see that change, especially if Juju, as you mentioned down there, is limited at all. So the game obviously is a 49ers Super Bowl matchup. We did get news that we should see Ricky Pearsall this week, according to Jonathan Jones, at least. And I think, from a fantasy angle, what do I expect? I don't know that I'd plan for anything super different, but if he's on your team, I would not be getting rid of him until after I see something happen this week, because this week you might actually get a little bit more than what you had previously. All right. The Dolphins come out of the bye to face the Colts. And if there is a team that needed a break, it was the Miami Dolphins. And oddly enough, they go out on a win, of course, over the basically hapless Patriots at the time. Without Tua, as you guys know, the lineup has just been awful. And frankly, everyone on the team has been completely useless. So this team has needed to make changes for weeks and hasn't. So I don't personally have a ton of faith that they're going to be capable of doing that coming out of the bye week. I was a really big Mike McDaniel believer, and I've been a little bit disappointed in the way that they've approached things. There was a quote, hey, Tua's going to play this season, but we don't expect him this week out of the bye. And we don't really know when that is. It's really disappointing to me that you have two insanely good wide receivers, a really good running back room as a whole, and you're just throwing the season away. Somehow they're still second in the division right now because of the Jets' loss to the Bills, but you've got to they have to do something, and their quarterback situation is terrible, and they have not done what they can to find a way to make something happen. Again, they did get a win over the Patriots, but like, is that really relevant for you moving forward in consideration of what you might be able to do? They did put up 372 yards, and Jalen Wright and Raheem Mostert put up about 80 yards each in that game prior to the bye. So maybe I am being a little bit hard. I don't know. But I want to say you could spot start Devon Achane, but I don't think you can. I own him and Tyreek Hill in leagues, and I have been benching them. You can't do it. You just can't do it. Without a passing game, he can't get it done. They stack the box. He had a bad yards per carry even with Tua in week 1. Most of his stuff has been through the passing game there. And as we know, the passing game is awful right now. So I'll be watching to see if Mike McDaniel can possibly garble anything together against a semi-vulnerable Indianapolis Colts team. I'd assume that they try and run the ball and play defense against the inaccurate Anthony Richardson, but that to me does not, indicate a Devon Achane start, but more a Raheem Mostert start. I don't really want to play anybody, but if I have to, as crazy as it sounds, I'm probably playing Mostert over Achane because I believe that he has a better opportunity and ability to get the hard yards than Achane does, because that's just what we've seen, and that's what makes sense. Question by Tanner Bowman: Tyreek Hill or Brian Thomas Jr.? Brian Thomas will probably draw Christian Gonzalez. Gonzalez has been following guys. That's one thing that's been interesting to watch for the Patriots defense this year. That doesn't mean every snap or anything like that. Brian Thomas Jr. has been very, very good, and at least for a rookie. The problem has been the quarterback play or just the offense in general, and you can evaluate that how you like. But against the Patriots in London, they've had an extra week to prepare. Tyreek Hill with whoever the heck the Dolphins throw back there, Snoop Huntley or whoever they decide to go with this week. This sounds crazy, but I'd have to go with Brian Thomas Jr. One of these weeks I'm going to be wrong about that. But you can't start Tyreek Hill for 5 weeks hoping for the 1 week that you actually get something. I don't know if he's even crossed like wide receiver 32 since Tua has been out. It's been really, really bad. So you just have to go with Brian Thomas there. The Vikings come out of the bye to face the in-division rivals, the Lions. They made a trade for Cam Akers because Aaron Jones is a bit banged up at the moment. Follow for more information on whether or not he will be playing as well. This team, of course, is basically the biggest surprise of the year, Sam Darnold in particular, of course. And Sam Darnold has 3 top 10 quarterback weeks coming into this week, and did have an interception in basically every single game. And last time we saw him had 0 touchdowns, 179 yards when playing against the tougher Jets defense. The Lions are no defense to sneeze at. However, as you all probably know, they no longer have the best pass rusher in the league this year and likely defensive player of the year before the injury, Aiden Hutchinson. And that does make a big difference. They will have to make some adjustments on the back end of that defense, and we'll have to see how that plays out against this Vikings wide receiver room. Obviously, they should be able to get some production from the 2 guys who are there, and we can dig into that. I would have hoped that we saw, TJ Hawkinson and further news on him at this point. There's not a whole heck of a lot going on out there as to when we can expect him back and healthy. Well, the defense for Detroit will not be as stiff without the best pass rusher in the league. I wonder if they dial up some coverages, some man defense, and maybe double Justin Jefferson. This is just speculation on my part, but cover 1, double JJ. I don't know. Not a bad call necessarily if you have somebody who can keep up with Jordan Addison, just to keep Darnold throwing it into tight spaces and need time for the play to develop. If you can get that pass rush there a little bit quicker. I don't think Darnold has been tested in the way that, he was particularly with the Jets. Obviously, very different organizations. Kevin O'Connell been doing a very, very good job over there. So not a criticism of the Vikings in any way. And I just, as much as it has been really great in a lot of ways, I do think when he's tested a little bit tougher, we might see some cracks start to form with Sam Darnold. So just keep an eye out on that. This will especially be the case if they don't have Aaron Jones and their run game just evaporates. They don't really have anybody else who's super productive in the room. Cam Akers, okay, great, bringing him in, but there's a reason that he's bounced around a couple of times and they didn't bring him back in the first place. So, trading for him is great and all. Super low value picks. Kind of need somebody. If Aaron Jones is in there, I do think that helps a whole heck of a lot. Justin Jefferson, of course, has been great, and this could be more of an opportunity to get Jordan Addison back in the swing of things. He has a wide receiver week in week 4, but that was helped by a rushing score. And since returning, he has had 4 targets in 2 games and 8 targets in the Jets game while they were trying to catch up there. Addison just feels like a lock for, I don't know, maybe 6 targets this week, if I had to guess. So if you need to start, it's not a bad move unless Darnold somewhat completely falls apart. But the thing that I'm watching for the Vikings is, can they keep it up? They're currently one of the 2 undefeated teams, along with the Chiefs. Both of those, of course, coming out of the bye this week. As I mentioned, I'll be at Commanders versus Panthers. Maybe you'll see some things from me live in that game. I'll try not to flood your feeds, but look forward to seeing Jaden Daniels hook up with Terry McLaurin there a couple of times. If you get a chance, check out the rest of our shows and everything else along the Player Profiler network of podcasts. Make sure to check out our website as well at 32beatwriter.com, where we have player news, summaries, player tracking tools, and more. We're going to be bringing a whole heck of a lot more to you in the next couple of months here, so make sure to pay attention for that as we get deeper and better with what we do. Make sure to keep up there for all of the most recent and relevant information, and use podcast as your code for the pro membership to get 50% off your first month for all of the 32 Beat Writer staff. I am Zach Haidu, and we will see you next time.